What's going on, guys? In today's video, I'll be doing a bunch of trade sims from yesterday's trade deadline. Obviously, there was a ton of moves being made, so it would be tough to make a video for every single one of those. I did already cover the Rantanen trade. I gotta point out, though, when I did that, all the details weren't made public yet. Since then, they've actually added the fact there were 2 third-rounders added, and one of the first was actually 2028, not 2027. So I'm going to retry this trade just to show everybody, it still wouldn't matter. Dallas is still going to accept enthusiastically. And if we did it on the other side, the Carolina Hurricanes would definitely still reject. Again, Stan Coven there is a solid, young player there, elite potential. They also get a first in 2026. Both these firsts are top 10 protected. I don't really see Dallas picking top 10 anytime soon. They also get a third there in 2027 and then a first in 2028. So right there, you guys can see the haul from Rantanen. As usual, guys, every single trade in this video will be on medium difficulty. You can see there the value is still at least double on Rantanen's side. So yeah, the Dallas Stars accept. And again, didn't really change much. I'm sure the Hurricanes would still reject. And now the next trade I want to look at, guys, the Vegas Golden Knights getting Riley Smith back on their team. Usually Vegas pretty busy at the deadline. They only make this one small move, but they do get a familiar face there in Smith. In game, you guys can see he's 83 overall, only making 2.5. The Rangers actually retain half that contract, which might make them say no in this, just because I mentioned before, like, the computers are so weird with salary retention, especially when it is beginning of the season. Obviously, it would just take forever if I had to sim, to the trade deadline for every one of these trades. Now, Vegas Golden Knights here get up Brendan Brisson, former first-round pick. I've always been a fan of his. He played at Michigan, but they've been pretty patient with him, and unfortunately hasn't really lived up to a first-round pick talent. And they also give up the Sharks' third-round pick in 2025, which will probably be like the first pick or second pick of the third round, so almost a second. You guys can see here the value is actually way on the Golden Knights side because Brisson still has that medium top 6 potential. So we'll see if even with retention, Rangers say yes. And they say no. So again, that's what I was talking about. With that retention, it kind of screws everything up. As like I was saying, guys, we're going to try to trade without the retention. I feel like Rangers will now say yes. Oh, wow, they reject it. It's still not enough for them. That's crazy. In real life, I feel like that's a pretty good return there for Riley Smith. And one kind of crazy thing, guys, I want to point out with this trade is Trevor Connolly here, Vegas Golden Knights first-round pick in 2024, is the only first-round pick the Vegas Golden Knights have yet to trade away, and they don't actually have another first-round pick until 2027. So just kind of crazy how aggressive Vegas has been since joining the league. And now trying to trade you guys from Vegas perspective, you can see they actually don't want Riley Smith, nor is Brisson on the block. And it was the same thing when we were in Vegas. The Rangers didn't want Brisson, nor did they have Smith on the block. Now the Vegas Golden Knights do have the third on the block. 50% retention. The value there, I think, is just too high on Vegas' side. And yeah, trade rejected. So by both sides, EA thinks this was a fair deal. And next you guys look at the trade the Rangers made with the Avalanche. Avalanche probably the busiest team of the trade deadline. After getting rid of Rantanen, they were not done there. So they get Ryan Lindgren, who's obviously a pretty solid defensive defenseman. Hasn't been as good the last couple years, but I think with the Avs, he will do better. They also get Jamie Vesey here, who's like a fine fourth line forward. I see they also got Hank Kemp, who I actually don't think is in our roster, so we'll just leave him out. It should actually make it easier, 2 for 2. As the Rangers get back Calvin DeHaan, who's definitely, bottom pairing defenseman. It's actually kind of funny. I was talking to some people about this trade. They didn't even realize DeHaan was still in the league. And then UC Parson here is a decent young forward, 2378, medium top 9 in game. I feel like, could cover a role with the Rangers. Now, the Avs also added the Carolina Hurricanes second-round pick here in 2025, along with their own fourth-round pick, 2025. I mean, that should be a late second. Obviously, Lindgren is an upgrade on DeHaan. And I believe the Rangers also retained 50% of Lindgren's contract, making this, trade even nicer there for the Avs. Value-wise, it is pretty equal. They want Lindgren and VC. Picks are on the block. Avs say yes. Okay, so I feel like, honestly, a pretty fair trade for both sides. And so now, guys, we're trying to trade from the Avs perspective. I got the Rangers retaining 50% on Lindgren. They want DeHaan, Parson, and the fourth. We'll see what they say here. Again, value looks pretty equal. Trades rejected. I'm going to guess it's because of the retention. So we just took it off. And the Rangers still say no. Interesting. Okay, so EA feels like the Avs got the better of this deal. Like I said, real life, I think it was pretty fair. Now, like I said, guys, the Avs are busy. They also made a trade for Brock Nelson, and they got back William Dufour, a decent AHL player, but they gave up Callum Ritchie, who's probably their best prospect. 2026 first, 2028 third, and then Oliver Shillington. So we'll take a look here, guys, at Brock Nelson in game. Normally, he would have a modified no trade clause. I had to turn it off because obviously he waived. 32 years old there, 86 overall, making $6 million. Of course, was a member of that American Four Nation team. Definitely like, a pretty underrated player. Scores a lot of goals in front of the net, decent defensively. 6'4". I feel like, he could be a really good second line center here for the Avs, especially come playoff time. And like I was saying before, Dufour here, pretty decent AHL player, 2276. He has been doing worse, but he did put up, 48 points in 69 games back in 22-23. So an interesting player they're getting back. But now, like I was saying, they give out their best prospect in Callum Ritchie. He actually made the team to start the year before getting sent back down to junior. 77 overall there at 19, medium top 6 potential. I definitely can see him being an impactful player for the Islanders in the not too distant future. They also give a 2026 first and a 2028 third with Oliver Shillington, who's basically just like, a fill-in defenseman. Now, Islanders here have to retain 50% of Nelson's contract, and that still might not be enough because, again, these trades were made at the deadline. So I just did some cap circumvention, guys. As you can see, too, look at the trade value. It's definitely on the Avs side, maybe even double. And I mean, it makes sense. The Islanders are getting back a top prospect, a first-round pick, and a third. Dufour is actually on the block for them. I should mention, for whatever reason in game, their status is buyers, so they're probably not going to be as likely to want to retain on Nelson, which means might have to actually take that off to make this trade happen. But we'll try it first, see what the Islanders say. Again, the value's on our side, so they're getting a good deal. Okay, yeah, they still do reject it though. So we'll try here with no salary retention. What do the Islanders say now? And now they say yes. Okay, so again, the salary retention in this game is kind of weird. I think that shows Islanders definitely won this trade. And like I was saying, guys, the Avs aren't done yet. They also made a pretty big trade here, giving up Casey Middlestat, William Zellers, and a second-round pick for Charlie Coyle in a fifth. Zellers is actually a pretty good prospect, currently playing the NCAA. As you guys can see in our roster, 18 years old, 63 overall, medium top 9. Was picked in 2024. Of course, the big part of this trade is Casey Middlestat. In game here, 25 years old, 85 overall, high top 6 potential, former top 10 pick. Honestly, if you look at that Boston Bruins center depth, I feel like he's a guy that could end up being the 1C. Like, I think he's got the most potential. Now, they also get a 2025 second-round pick here, so Boston's doing very good. No offense to Charlie Coyle, but I feel like the Avs are paying a lot here. I know Coyle's better defensively than Middlestat. He comes in as a 3C, you know, probably fits better there. Can play the PK as well. Bigger guy, probably better playoff player, but I mean, they're giving up Middlestat, who I think is a very comparable player, maybe even a better player, plus a decent prospect and a second-round pick. It just seems like quite a lot. And again, they do get back a fifth-round pick. And I should mention, too, guys, just like Nelson, Coyle had a no-trade clause, which he's waiving to go to Colorado. Value here you can see is definitely on the Avs side. I feel like there's no way the Bruins say no to this. And yeah, trade's accepted. So again, in-game, EA feels like the Avs lost this one, and Boston won it. And I'm not going to do this for every single team, guys, but since the Avs made so many trades, I want to give you an updated look at their lines when healthy. Honestly, I think, you know, they're probably the number 2 team to beat in the West behind the Dallas Stars now. You got Lehkonen, McKinnon, and Natchez on that first line. Second line, there's Duran, Nelson, Nichushkin, O'Connor, Coyle, Colton on the third. It's a very solid third line. And even VC there, Drury, and Wood on the fourth is also solid. Defensively now, you got Taze, McCarr, Manson, Lindgren is your top 4. Girard even on the bottom pairing with Eric Johnson. Could be someone else filling in for the 6th guy. Goaltending wise, of course, Blackwood's been great since going there. Wedgwood as well has been solid as the backup. So the Avs are looking really good. If somehow, by some miracle, they can get their captain, Landeskog, back for the playoffs, that'd be huge too. But I just watched an interview with him where I don't think that's going to be the case. Now this next trade, guys, hurts me to look at. Jake Walman going to the Edmonton Oilers for a first-round pick and Carl Berglund. The fact that the Red Wings, Yzerman, paid a second-round pick to get rid of Jake Walman, I'll still never get over. Like, he's still pretty young, 28, 84 overall in our roster. I think 87 in the EA one, which is crazy. And again, he's on a pretty good deal, I think. $3.4 million next 2 years. I still don't understand how we had to pay to get rid of this guy. It makes no sense to me. And the fact we could have just literally held on to him and got a first-round pick, you know, come the trade deadline. So the Sharks here get a first, which I think is a great return. Again, they essentially got a first and second-round pick for free after having Jake Walman for like 50 games. Berglund, I think, is just there for the roster spot. Trade value-wise, it looks like it's on the Oilers side. So Sharks should say yes. And yeah, trade's accepted. And now this next trade, guys, was definitely an interesting one. The Buffalo Sabres trade Dylan Cousins, Dennis Gilbert, and a second-round pick to the Ottawa Senators in exchange for Josh Norris and Jacob Bernard-Docker. I feel like both Dylan Cousins and Josh Norris are very similar skill-wise. Obviously, Dylan Cousins wasn't really happy in Buffalo, wanted to change the scenery, and I know the Sens haven't been too happy with Norris, you know, always being injured. So I guess they decided to give both guys a change of scenery. In game here, you can see Cousins, 23 years old, 84 overall, high toss of potential. He's on a big contract there, making $7.1 million for the next 6 years. Sabres also give up Dennis Gilbert here. He's basically just there for the roster spot. No offense to him. And they also give up a 2026 second-round pick, which honestly, if they don't turn it around, that could be like a late first there for the Sens. So I do like this trade a lot for the Sens. Even if you think Norris is a slightly better player because, you know, he's got that goal-scoring ability, he is injured quite a bit, and you're getting back like a high second. They also were giving up a pretty good, you know, young defenseman though in Bernard-Docker. So Norris here, you guys can see in game 25-85. Making more money, almost $8 million for the next 6 years. Also has the high toxic potential. So, like I said, I think skill-wise, you know, these two guys are very similar. And then, like I said, too, Jacob Bernard-Docker here, a decent young defenseman, 24 years old, 80, high top 60 in game. I know he's good at blocking shots. He was on waivers at one point, though, so, like, I don't know how much value he'd really have here. I think it's kind of crazy, honestly. Buffalo has to add a second-round pick. Like I said, I think Cousins and Norris are pretty similar. A lot of people actually like Cousins more. Obviously, Bernard-Docker is better than Gilbert, but I feel like Buffalo, a third max, maybe a fourth to smooth this out. A second-round pick, I really do think, gives the edge to the Sens here. But in-game, we'll see what happens. The value is on Buffalo's side. And yeah, Senators say yes. And now trying this straight from the Senators side, you guys can see Buffalo is interested in Josh Norris. They're not interested in Bernard-Docker nor any other guys on the block. And the value is like double on their side. So I assume the Sabres say no. And yeah, trade is rejected. I will say one interesting thing with this deal, even though I feel like the Senators won it, Josh Norris is like best friends with Brady Tkachuk. He was pretty upset when they made this trade. He was getting a little bit teary-eyed. I wonder if this affects, you know, him staying in Ottawa at all. Most Sens fans say no, but We'll have to wait and see. And the Senators actually made a couple nice trades at the deadline, guys. The first was Norris for Cousins. The next was actually getting Fabian Zetterlund. And they got him at a really good price, in my opinion. As you guys can see in game, Zetterlund there, 25 years old, 8th year overall, medium top 6. Last year, they have a pretty cheap contract, $1.5 million. They also got back Tristan Robbins, an okay prospect, 22, 72, medium top 9 there in game. Was a second round pick in 2020. And they get back the Sharks' 4th round pick there in 2025. So again, that's almost a third. And now the Sens give up Zach Ostapchuk, who's a pretty good prospect, 2175, high top 9. Hasn't quite become an everyday NHLer yet, you know, spending some time in the NHL, sometimes in the AHL. They also have Noah Gregor here returning to the Sharks. He's basically just like a depth forward, nothing crazy. And then the big return for the Sharks is actually the Sens' 2025 second round pick. So again, for them, I actually thought Zetterlund might be part of that, you know, Sharks core in the future, but clearly they see their core much further out than like a 25-year-old, you know, being 28, 29. They see, I guess, you know, them actually competing for a cup 5-6 years down the road when Celebrini and Smith are fully in their prime. So looking at the value here, it's actually pretty equal, maybe a tad on the Sens side. So we'll see what the Sharks say. Medium difficulty. Trades accepted, okay. And now next year, guys, we're trying to trade from the Sharks' perspective. I totally forgot to do this originally. Honestly, I think this is a trade that will get accepted both sides. Senators want Zetterlund and the 4th. They have a Ostapchuk and the 2nd on the block. Again, the value is very close to equal. We'll see what they say. Wow, yeah, trades accepted. So I think this might be the only trade both teams accept, which obviously shows EA feels like this was a very, very fair trade. And after those two trades, guys, here's an update look at the Sens roster when healthy. You got Kachuk, Stützle, Giroux still in that first line. Second line looks pretty solid, I think. You got Baffs in there playing with Cousins and Zetterlund. Third line, you're going to have Perron, Pinto, and Greg. Like, that's a pretty decent top 9. Fourth line even, Amadeo, Gaudette, and Cousins. Is this a playoff forward group? Potentially. Defensively here, Sanderson, Zub, Jensen, Shabbat, Clevin there, and Hamonic isn't too bad. Of course, a big upgrade for them this year was getting that true starting goaltender in Linus Ullmark. I think a big reason why they've kind of turned it around. So it's going to be close, you know, in the stretch here. Will it be them, Columbus, Detroit, you know, getting one of those final wildcard spots? And now next year, we got training like the Toronto Maple Leafs getting Scott Laughton with a 4th and 6th round pick for Nikita Grabenkin there. Decent, you know, young player, and a 1st round pick in 2027. I feel like Scott Laughton's a guy that can, you know, plug in anywhere in your lineup, whether it be 1st, 2nd, 3rd line. Can play power play, can play PK. Good contract too, $3 million this year and next. And they actually got him at 50% retention, so he's only making 1.5. I think that's a huge part for the Leafs, you know, actually having a serviceable player on such a cheap deal. And as you guys can see here, the Flyers are interested in the Maple Leafs 1st in 2026, not 2027, which is kind of weird. And then the player they're getting back, Nikita Grabenkin, like I said, decent young player. 21 years old, 76 overall, high top 9. Flyers do want him. You guys might remember him from that one viral video.
Back check, forward check, and pay check. Yeah.
So I'm sure Leafs fans, you know, sucks to see him go, but you're getting back a very good player in Scott Laughton. So now we have to retain 50% on the Flyers side, which again, in game, the fact he signed longer than this year, they're going to hate that. You basically have to overpay big time. And look at the value. The value is actually pretty equal. So I think it would be a fair trade, but they're not going to like the retention. And so yeah, trade is rejected. So we'll try this with no retention where we kind of get a better idea of the actual value that the AI sees. And now they say yes. So I do think pretty fair trade. And the Leafs weren't done there, guys. They also went out and got Brandon Carlo from the Boston Bruins, their rival, in exchange for Fraser Minton, 2026 first, and then the Flyers' 4th round pick they actually had just gotten. You can see Carlo here does have modified no trade. Luckily, he would waive to come to the Leafs. 27 years old, so still relatively young, 85 overall, making $4 million for the next 3 years. I think it's a pretty good contract for a guy like him, can play in your top 4. You know, obviously likes to throw the body, big defenseman, 6'5", solid defensively. Leafs obviously trying to shore up that right side D. I did hear some rumors about them potentially trying to go after Rantanen. It didn't work, obviously. Decided to go with Dallas instead, but kind of crazy to see that. And now Fraser Minton here, you can see he's a decent young player, 20 years old, 77 overall. He's got high top 9. I feel like he probably, you know, projects out to maybe be like a solid 3C. And then again, Leafs also give a 1st round pick there in 2026 with the Flyers 4th in 2025. So we'll see what Boston says this offer, guys. It is kind of interesting. Even though Carlo's on the block, they do want both Minton and the 4th there. Value, I think, is a bit on our side. Let's see what Boston says. Trades accepted. Okay, so there you go. I wonder if the Leafs will actually accept it from their side as well. And after the two trades, guys, here's an update look at the Leafs lines. You can see they got Nyes, Matthews, Marner, 1st line, Nylander, Tavares. I'm thinking maybe Domi. Right out the top 6. This is, of course, when they're healthy. You got Pacioretty now in the 3rd with Laughton and McCann, Robertson, Camp, and Yarncroc, who I think just came back. Defensively here, of course, Riley Tanev on that top pair. You got Carlo in the mix now with McCabe, Ekman Larson, Benoit. Obviously, these two moves, you know, give them a lot of added depth. They still need to get healthy, though, and I think Leafs should have a decent shot here at the Cup. I know, sounds crazy to say. Like, their goalies, Stolarz, Woll, both playing well. We'll see what happens. And quickly here, guys, I want to try the Scott Laughton trade from the Flyers' perspective. See if maybe both teams would say yes. You can see there the Leafs want the 2 mid picks. Grabenkin's on the block. Don't want Laughton, though, nor is their 1st on the block, even though they're a buyer. Values, though, are pretty equal. Trades rejected. Dang, that's with Laughton at 50%. So, yeah, in-game, EA feels like the Leafs pay too much. And so now, guys, we're trying the Carlo trade from the Bruins perspective. As you can see, the Leafs are interested in him. Minton in the first on the block. The Philadelphia fourth, though, is. Right now, the trade wouldn't go through. I actually didn't realize the Bruins retained $615,000 on this deal. It looks like we might have to retain slightly more, $675,000. That'll make it go through. I don't think, the 50K difference will actually affect this trade. The value there is on the Leafs side. So even though they want Carlo and we have, a little bit of retention on him, I think the first and Minton is just going to be too much for them. And yeah, trade is rejected. And since we're on Boston, guys, we'll try the Coyle for Middlestat trade from their perspective. Again, even though the Avs want both things, the value is just so much higher there on Middlestat. Seeing as he's younger, higher rated, I think he's an 85, Coyle there in 84. Even if they're both 84s, Middlestat's still the younger guy, and then you're getting a decent prospect and a second. Again, I think the Avs gave up quite a bit here, so an easy reject from them. And then the last trade of the video we're looking at, guys, the Boston Bruins trading their captain, Brad Marchand. Obviously a long-time Bruin. I think he's got over 1,000 games played for the franchise, but they're clearly in fire sale mode. He actually had a modified no trade I had to take off because he wouldn't go to the Panthers. And as you guys can see there, all the Bruins got from Marchand was a second round pick. Now it's conditional. I think if the Panthers win a couple playoff series, it turns into a first, but still, based on the other prices, like Anthony Beauvillier went for a second round pick. I know it's a second that can't become a first, but it's still pretty crazy to see. So we'll start off here, guys, asking for a 2027 first round pick from the Panthers. And now, just like in real life, guys, we got to retain 50% of Marchand's contract so this trade goes through. Again, since he's not expiring contract, not a big deal. And as you can see here, the first round pick for the Panthers actually looks to have more value, but I feel like as a buyer, they probably value Brad Marchand more, especially with the retention. We'll see, though, what they say. Trades rejected. Wow, so they do think the first round pick's too much. I'm sure they're going to say yes to a second, which tells me, a conditional second that could turn into a first is actually pretty fair value. But again, based on the price we saw at the deadline, Anthony Beauvillier going for a second, I really expected the Bruins to get more. Now again, Marchand could kind of choose his spot probably with that modified no trade. Plus, they probably respect him, want to send him to a contender. Kind of crazy he goes to the team that's knocked him out the last couple of years, but I'm sure, again, the Panthers say yes to that. And yeah, the second round pick, an obvious accept. So there you have it, guys. I think I put out a tweet saying what everyone was thinking, which is just now that Brad Marchand's on the Panthers. Imagine if they ran a line of, say, Matthew Tkachuk, Brad Marchand, and Sam Bennett. That would be absolutely incredible. Well, definitely a line you do not want to play against in the playoffs. Just, three pests out there, get in your face. I'm sure a line you'd love to have, but yeah, definitely not one you want to play against. I saw people saying, too, they could put, one of those guys in all three lines, and come playoff time, there's somebody out there that you just do not want to have to play against. So it's going to be really interesting to see what the Panthers do in terms of that lineup, but that's going to do it for this video, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, leave that thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't, and let me know in the comment section below what you thought was like the biggest fleece of the trade deadline. And as always, guys, thank you so much for watching. Have a nice day. Goodbye.